Much, Sue, for doing this.
Ooh, recording in progress.
Oh, thank you so much for doing this, Sue. I'm going to let Sue take over, but Sue has done this once for the library before and did an excellent job. And we're just so pleased that you would consent to doing this again. We're all very excited about it. And so I'm just going to mute myself and let Sue take it away. But Sue, of course, are you with the AMC New Hampshire organization. So thank you again, Sue.
Oh, you're welcome. So, and Robin, I invite everyone to, if you have a question or you want to hear more about anything, you just toss a question into the chat. I'm not going to be able to see the chat as I'm talking. I don't have enough screen real estate. So Robin's just going to jump in and just let me know when anyone has a question and just interrupt me. So, okay, with that, let's see if everything's going to work. Okay. So I have a lot. I'll introduce myself in a second, but just to warn you, I have a lot in this presentation, and I kind of want to be steered by you all a little bit. The first part is sort of lessons and links and things that I've learned and resources that I use. And then the second part is more about hikes themselves, particular hikes. Everyone has their favorites, but it's one list. So as we go through, I'm going to go sort of quickly so that we're not here for forever. But again, feel free to jump in and ask a question. I'd be happy to stop and do more. Okay, so that's me. I have so few hiking pictures that I like, because I hike alone a lot. My name is Sue Zielinski. I live up in Dalton, New Hampshire, which is up north of Franconia Notch, about 15 minutes east of Littleton. So I'm fortunate enough to be super close to trailheads. We're about 25 minutes from the Appalachia trailhead up to the Presidentials. We're close to Zealand. It makes a lot of what the hiking that I like to do possible, because I'm not driving so far. I've done the 48s. I've done the 52 with a view. I'm currently working on tracing the White Mountains. So that's walking on every trail, every 0.1 mile of every trail in the White Mountain Guide. And I'm at about 75% complete. So next year, doubtful, but by the year after that, hopefully. I've also done a bunch of hiking in other parts of the world. It's Arizona. I've hiked about half of the Arizona Trail, which is 800 miles in Arizona, which is pretty spectacular. And then this is Spain, the Spanish Pyrenees. The Whites are harder than pretty much anywhere else. So if you can hike the Whites, I think you can hike anywhere. So lessons from the woods. So first and foremost, safety, right? The mountains can kill you, but probably won't. It's really important that you know your limits, to leave a detailed itinerary with someone and check in with them. That's my husband typically. Be able to call for help. I'll show you some technology later that I never hike without, so that I can press the button and call for help. And you be prepared to wait. So pack for survival. Be prepared to spend a night, because even when you call for a pickup, it could be hours or the next day before someone actually gets to you. So even when you're on a small hike, it's important to carry some gear to help you survive should anything go wrong. Click. There we go. Weather. Okay, so when you're planning your hike, if you're going up into the Presidentials, the Mount Washington Observatory has the higher summits forecast. It is spectacular. I trust them, more than any other weather site, to give really detailed information about what's going on in the Presidentials. The weather up there is crazy. I don't go up unless the forecast is spectacular. So when, mostly in the clouds, becoming in the clear, nope, not going. And the winds are super important, because the winds get to be howling up there. So this is a great site. There's also mountainforecast.com, which has some mountain forecasts specific to each mountain at the summit and at the base. So that's another good site for weather. Stream crossings are another important aspect of weather. A lot of trails in the White Mountain Guide say may be difficult to cross when water levels are high, which means bring another pair of shoes. And some are just unsafe. So there's a link here to somewhere where you can look at what what stream heights are looking like at that time. So if it's a tricky crossing, you might want to keep an eye on that. The link here on crossing safely is just that. There's some advice on what should you do to get safely across a stream that looks like it could sweep you away. Because the power of water can be pretty surprising. Mindset. So if you haven't read any of Ty Gagney's books, he's got a couple. The Last Traverse is a really good eye-opening look at how things can go really wrong when you're making choices about hiking. It talks about the Lincoln Lafayette Traverse, and I could really picture myself in the shoes of the gentlemen who were hiking. So you have to decide in advance it's okay to turn back, right? You don't have to reach the summit. Being safe is far more important than checking off that 4,000 footer. I'm not going to click through this, but there's a rescue operation on Mount Madison where you can see the rescuers in the winter pretty much being blown off their feet as they're trying to walk across the snow. This was a little 6 seconds of up on Madison. I was trying to stay upright. I kind of came, over onto the col where I think the clouds were streaming over the top, and I get up there and it's howling up there, and the peak's probably only a couple of tenths of a mile away, and I'm like, yeah, no, that's not happening today. Plenty of other opportunities to get up on Madison. Oh, there we go. All right. Another aspect of safety is critters. Like people are always worried about bears in the woods, but really it's probably the ticks and mosquitoes that are more of a danger to you. So I linked in a few sites where you can look, how do I deal with ticks? What really works for mosquitoes? The bug net in the spring, especially, is just provides sanity. It looked like a complete doofus, but that's okay. The bugs are off my face. Black bears, right? Black bears, you fight back. I've run into a bunch of bears in the woods. I've never had a scary encounter, gotten between a mom and her cubs or anything. But it's still, moose should probably be on here. Moose I've only encountered rarely, in the woods, but again, being super respectful that they can charge, especially in mating season. These deer fly patches are my new love, right? If you've ever had the deer flies circling your head, just driving you insane, you can actually put a little patch on your hat. It's a little double-sided sticky tape. And you just tape those guys right to your hat. Waterborne safety is super important. I carry a Sawyer squeeze. I carry it on day hikes too, right? Just in case, because why not? It doesn't weigh very much. But even if the water's running and looks really good, you just never know if something died and is lying in the stream 50 feet up. You just don't know. So, better safe than sorry. Doesn't take very long to filter water. Highly recommend a Hike Safe card. I think it's total $95. Listen, the price has gone up. You don't have to buy it. It's optional. But it contributes to all the rescuers that come out and get people off the mountains. You're covered unless you are under the influence or doing something reckless. And I hadn't seen many cases where they actually were charging hikers, but just a few weeks ago, there was a couple of young men who just decided to explore. They didn't need a trail. They just decided to explore. So they were about to fall off a cliff. So it took forever to get them out of there. It was, everyone was in danger at that point. So they did decide to charge them. It still wasn't really that much, honestly, but it makes a lot of sense. Okay, that's briefly on safety. Where to go? There's so many sources of where to hike. The White Mountain Guide, the 30th edition, because I'm tracing, this is my go-to, this is my hiking Bible. It's like falling apart. The 31st edition is about to come out this fall, I believe. So if you haven't purchased the 30th, you might just hold off, get the 31st. There's a Southern New Hampshire Trail Guide. There's a 52 with a View Guide. Ken McGray, who wrote that, is also the editor of the White Mountain Guide, along with Steve Smith. So, you know, it's kind of dry reading in some ways. It comes with maps, but really it's like, it describes everything that you need to know about stream crossings, anything you need to know about any trail out there. Lots of lists. You name it, there is a list for it. So New England Waterfalls site talks about the 4,000 footers, New England hikers. This topo map the AMC sells, like this is hanging in my kitchen. And it's just, I never liked maps before I started hiking, but you know, I just love looking at this and planning, you know, where am I headed next? People who check boxes, who like lists, have invented all kinds of variations. The 4,000 footers, some people have a grid going on where you hike every mountain in every month or in every season. This Diratissima is when you hike all 4,000 footers essentially in one hike, like one backpacking hike, which is crazy, not just a lot. So anyway, there's lists for everything, and you might find one that appeals to you. There's 52 with a view list. I highly, highly, highly recommend. Those are 52 great mountains that are smaller than the 4,000 footers, but all have great views. There's the Terrifying 25. Been on some of those this summer. There are some terrifying ones. Randolph Mountain Club up in Randolph has a Randolph Mountain Club 100. So if you've been up in the presidentials at all, you've been on their trails too. I really want this patch. I think this is a super cute little Terrifying 25 patch. Tracing the White Mountains, again, formerly known as redlining. That was used for a lot of years until we realized that that's a really historically loaded term referring to some, you know, racist practices in the past. So tracing the whites is what we're using. Literally walking every foot of every trail in the White Mountain Guide. So I've gone back to, like, you know, a 10-mile hike to pick up a 0.2-mile spur that I didn't walk on the first time I was there. So this is a special kind of insanity, but everyone has their insanity. This map is a little coloring map, so you can color in where you've been. You know, my little marker, and I get back from a hike and my husband laughs at me and I color in my little piece of trail. So that's been really fun. Tracing has gotten me to go to places I would not have. Gets me out of Disneyland and into, you know, some solitude. You know, some of these trails I will never go on again. There's a reason no one goes there, but there's so many beautiful places that are not popular. So that's been a lot of fun. New England Family Hikes has a great website. They've got lots of hikes outlined, Hike New England. There are Facebook groups from nearly every hiking interest that you have, women hikers, tracers, you name it, there's a Facebook group for you. And of course, the AMC, I'd be remiss if I did not mention, the AMC sponsors hikes. So if you go to the outdoors.org website, you'll find hikes sponsored by not only the New Hampshire chapter, but the Mass chapter, anyone else who wants to come up and hike. So you can join one of those hikes to go in a group. So there's lots and lots of options. Gear. All right, so there are the 10 essentials. If I click through this, will I get back? This is the question. So things that this is a great site. So you should always have, you know, map and compass. So if you navigate with technology, it's still nice to have a backup paper map, warm clothing, extra food and water, a headlamp, because you just never know when you're going to sprain your ankle and it's going to take you forever to get out of the woods. Some way to start a fire for warmth, whistle, you know, could be built into your backpack, a knife just in case. So, you know, it's really good to have more than you think you're going to need at any particular time. Whoa, click there too soon. I highly recommend trekking poles. My first season hiking, my knees were in agony. Using poles correctly can really help you take the stress off your knees, both going uphill and downhill, especially. It's also for balance, helps you cross. streams. My poles are my tent poles too, so I have to take them to set up my tent. The one thing that I see people doing a lot where they're not really getting the most out of their poles is putting your poles, I get this out of the way here, putting your poles in front of you as you're going uphill. That makes sense. So really see if you do it. Yeah, so you know, your poles should really be behind you when you're going up and ahead of you as you're going down to help take the pressure off your knees. So I'd highly recommend you try out poles if you've not. Whoop, wrong button. No, no, yes. All right.
So sorry, I just got to say, I just got poles 2 years ago and I love them, but I think I've been doing them wrong with the, with the going up and down the hill, but I love them, especially as you say, if you're going across a stream and you're not quite sure if, you know, with your balance, I really love using the poles. I'm so glad we got them.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. Hiking for the seasons here, like packing for the seasons. Spring is anything and everything. This snow picture here is like the monorail that is left when the snow melts, right? Because it's been packed down where people are walking. So even if the rest is thawed, you're still walking on ice and snow. Micro spikes are in my bag until there's no more snow in Washington, because you just never know when you're going to run into a patch of ice that you need some help getting across. You know, fall's kind of the sweet spot, although it can get cold. Summer, you're packing for the bugs. You know, winter, you're packing for cold, right? And there's much less margin for error in the winter when you're out. So super important to think that through. How much do you carry, especially if you're backpacking, which is a whole different presentation. You know, you have the lady on the left, and then, you know, what are you going to carry? What makes you comfortable? How much can you afford? My backpack has gotten a lot lighter over the last 5 years, which has cost me a lot of money to get it lighter. But there's lots of advice on, you know, it's like an obsession with people to cut ounces from their pack. Right? So there's lots of ways that you can, sites to start reading about, you know, lightweight, less than 20 pounds. I'm in that boat, right? Ultralight, less than 10 to backpack, like to stay overnight. Yeah, I don't see that happening. But there are people who do it and are comfortable doing it. So interest in backpacking spawns a whole another set of issues. That's me. So here, 2015, that's a pretty big pack. That was pretty heavy. And, you know, I replaced everything in 2022. It's a much lighter pack. So it still feels like a lot when you're carrying it, but, you know, three days of food and 2 liters of water, I'm probably at about 22 pounds, which is not bad. This was a lot heavier, but yeah, hang on to your wallet. It would be much cheaper for me to lose 10 pounds than get 10 pounds out of my pack, but we do what we can. Okay, trip planning. So here's a few more sites that you might want to check. The White Mountain Guide has book time, and you, through experience, will see if your actual hiking time matches book time, if you're slower or you're faster. It's important to plan your bailouts. Like, if things go wrong, where can you get out of the woods faster than you had planned to start with? This is super important that I didn't even know when I started hiking, that lots of gates and roads close in New Hampshire in the winter. So if you want to go down Zealand Road, it's only open when the snow's melted. So there's some unofficial and official sites on when the gates and roads open. So it's super important in the fall when the snow starts falling, and in the spring as things are melting. Oh, this New England Trail Conditions is a really helpful website, again, especially in the shoulder season, spring and fall, because the hikers will go out and they'll post, oh, the snow's completely melted off of this mountain. And you're like, oh, okay, I can leave my micro spikes at home. Or, be sure that you bring snowshoes because it's super sloppy today. So that's really helpful. You can also post your own afterwards, but if you go somewhere and there's no recent posts, just add yours to the list. Bike spots are fun and terrifying sometimes. So if you can plan a hike that you don't quite get back to where you started from, you can walk the road, or you could bring a bike and station your bike ahead of time. Google Maps, if you click on, I want to navigate with my bike, will show you the elevation change. So you can decide, do you want to bike uphill or bike downhill? So I personally would rather climb and then bike downhill. That's me. AMC reservations, you can stay at the high huts. They are super, super fun. Not cheap, especially for a group, but it's a great way to get up into the mountains without having to carry a tent and all that food, because they feed you lunch, breakfast, and dinner. Disneyland stinks. Like it's not super fun to get on top of the mountain. This is Mount Major but you pick any 4,000 footer on a beautiful weekend and it's going to be packed up there. So when you're planning your trip, if you can start super early, avoid the most popular way up, pick another way, you'll have a lot more fun on trail. But last time we went up Lincoln Lafayette with family, it was like literally a stream of humanity going up there. It was crazy. So I'm not gonna do that again. Getting in shape is important, right? You don't want to, especially when you get a little older, you don't want to just jump out there and pretend you're 18 anymore. There are some preseason exercise lists that you can get from a Backpacker magazine, from the AMC. There are skills classes you can take to help prepare you ahead of time too. Keep hiking throughout the winter is a great way to stay in shape. I do a lot of smaller mountains in the winter, unless I'm in a group. KT tip was my jam for a while. I went through a lot of that stuff. It is not cheap, but it seemed to do something. Still not 100% convinced, but it seemed to do something. Solo or group. So it's like a completely different experience for me to hike by myself or with a group. When I started hiking solo, at first I was really nervous about it. So I started with hikes where I knew there would be people. So you're never really alone, climbing a 4,000 footer. But then I really grew to love it. And like in my mind, I just got into this really meditative state where I could get out there and just do my own thing, my own pace, think my own thoughts. It's pretty wonderful. Like, going with people is fun too. It's a very social experience. It's just a very different thing. But I really do enjoy my solo hiking. I did the Coast Trail solo. I've done all my Arizona hiking solo. And some of the less popular trails, you might not see anybody all day, which is kind of weird, but pretty cool. I am extra careful. I take an InReach, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. Winter, you got to be super careful, especially if you're by yourself. And that might be a time, that you might want to find some other groups as well to join up with. But, if it makes you nervous to think about solo hiking, right, that could be a reason to do it. You got to face your fears. Navigation. So as much as I love being out in the woods and being off my technology, I do confess, like this app is like, it is it for me. It's it used to be called Guthook Guides. They got bought out by Far Out, so it's now the Far Out app. This is not free. I think it's like $30 for the entire White Mountains, but it is spectacular. You can plan your route, so you just click on where you want to go, and it'll show you elevation profiles, mileage, campsites, water sources. You can see your elevation profile while you're hiking. You're like, am I at the top of the hill yet? And you can click on the button and be like, yeah, I'm getting there. I love it, love it, love it. There's others, there's Gaia, All Trails. There's others, but if I am not paid in any way by Far Out, but I really do really love this. When I'm hiking somewhere that's not on the app, I'm like, it's just not the same. Peak Finder is a cool app. If you don't have it, you can, kind of hold up your phone and see what mountains are out there. Cause I'm always like, what mountain is that? And I'm always surprised by what it is. So that's a cool app. iNaturalist, you work in conjunction with the AMC to collect information on what you're seeing, what's blooming, what bugs did you see, what plants did you see? So they're tracking that information over time. If you were into geocaching, like when my kids were little, this was how I got them out into the woods. Right? Geocaching is kind of like you're finding a treasure out in the woods. You get GPS coordinates that lead you to could be anything from a big ammo box to like a little tiny, remember film canisters back when we had film, that you find out in the woods somewhere. And those were fun. Those got him out there to look for things. And you can log them on the website and keep track of them. My InReach is like my security blanket. Cell coverage out there is super spotty. You may or may not have cell coverage all day. This InReach by Garmin has been wonderful. I had one sketchy hike out in the middle of some wilderness somewhere, and it was raining and it was cold, and I wasn't lost, but I knew where I was, but I kind of couldn't find where I needed to go. It was weird. And I'm like, okay, I'm just out here by myself. This is it. If I fall down now, it's not going to be pretty. So I went home and I bought this thing. It was the next one I bought. So this kind of satellite, you do have to buy a subscription. So you buy the device, but then you also have to pay like a monthly fee. I think mine's like $15 a month or something. You can suspend it in the winter if you're not hiking. But I can text over the satellite. So, there's a phone app that goes with it. You can also do it directly on the thing, but it's so tiny, it's really hard to do. So I can text over it, so we can correspond by text. You can press the button to call for help. When you call for help, you can then correspond with the rescue, your rescuers, to let them know how urgent is this, what's going on with you. And my husband, when I go hiking and he's home, he pulls up my track on his computer. He watches me go. Like every 20 minutes, it'll send a ping. So he'll watch my little blip as I go wherever I'm going. He's like, okay, she's still in the move. Everything's good. So, if I'm backpacking, when I get there, I ping. I'm like, yep, settling in for the night. I'm good. So it's really nice. It's really nice to have. So that's one kind. It's also personal locator beacons, which are they're less expensive. There's no subscription fees, but all you can do is just press the button to call for help. You can't communicate over it any other way. So, for me, this is a non-negotiable. Like I don't go anywhere without it anymore, even short stuff, because you just never know when you're going to fall and break your leg. You just never know. Okay, trail etiquette. Who's not been on the trail and been like, that so-and-so just did the thing? So typically, the big, people are generally polite in the woods. It's customary to yield to uphill hikers. If someone's coming up, they technically have the right of way, although they will often just yield it to you because they want to catch their breath. Leave no trace, right? Be respectful of wildlife in the woods. Music, I don't understand people who walk up the trail with their music blasting out for the world to hear, but please don't do that. Use your headphones if you want to listen to music. Dogs, I love dogs. I don't like them when they jump on me in the woods. It's almost every hike when there are people around, where at some point, some dog is going to come running at me to greet me, and the owner will say, don't worry, they're friendly. Okay. So dogs. COVID kind of doesn't really matter anymore. When I gave this last time, we were being super careful to get off trail, to be 6 feet apart, not pass, anybody's space, but we're kind of ignoring that at this point. Taking care of your business. We always laugh and say, when you're on the Appalachian Trail, when there's flies around, because somebody stopped to leave their business behind. you're a woman, there are options for things to replace toilet paper, which seem really weird, but are actually pretty handy. So there's some links there. More trail etiquette. If you're out in the winter, avoiding post holing, which is no fun, right? You step up and fall up to you break in up to your knees or your thighs, and it's miserable. And everyone behind that comes after you will hate you because it's dangerous. Right now, everybody's tripping and breaking their ankle. If you're post holing, you need snowshoes at that point. If you're near ski trails and there are groomed cross-country ski trails, you probably want to stay off them entirely, or at a minimum, snowshoes. Avoiding social trails or herd paths, which is where, you know, people start avoiding an obstacle and they make their own trails, right? That's really bad for the trails themselves. It leads to erosion and killing trees as you're going around them. And mud's just miserable, mud season. Ideally, you've got waterproof boots and you're just going to walk right through it instead of making the trail wider. I would take your poles, however, and see how deep it is. I've gotten in pretty deep at some point. You don't want to lose your shoe. Support your local groups. There's so many. There's a shockingly large number of hiking organizations out there. There's, you know, the Randolph Mountain Club. There's the Shelburne Trail Association. Like lots of towns have their own chunk of trails that they take care of. But, you know, if you have any interest in supporting any of these organizations, everyone's always looking for both time and money, right? You know, volunteer with your time or help with money. Support locally owned businesses. I mean, I started this list, but there's a million places. When we lived in Concord, when we started hiking, you know, we stopped at Woodstock Station after most hikes because we just had to. But there's so many wonderful places to stop that are local to have your downtime after your hike. Volunteering is super fun. So I am doing this talk as the programs committee co-chair for the New Hampshire chapter of the AMC. So it's kind of committee work where I try and find people to give talks like this. Occasionally do it myself. I also have a mile of trail that I've adopted at Mount Cardigan. So a few times a year I go out and I clear the leaves out of the drainage ditches and cut down any little trees that have fallen down, let them know if any major work is needed. There are always trails to adopt. It's actually super fun. Some of them are in the middle of nowhere. Like, and if you know where Six Husbands is, it's like in the middle of the Great Gulf, like in the Mount Washington like valley. Like you can't get to Six Husbands easily, never mind do trail maintenance on it. But there's a lot of cool trails available. If you wanted to eventually get into leading hikes, right, you can take some training with the AMC and you can lead hikes, summer, winter. And there's an endless number of ways to get involved. It's been really rewarding to give back a little, because I've loved the mountains so much and what other people are out there doing to keep the trails in good shape, that it's been really fun to give back a little and do it too. Okay, let me see, how'd we do? 40 minutes, that's not too bad. Does anybody have any questions about that chunk of stuff? There's a lot of links in there that you could click through later. Again, the link's in the chat if you came in a little later. There's a document with all those links. Any questions? Looks like no. All right, good to move on? Okay. So, okay, favorite hikes is like impossible because there are so many wonderful places to go. But you know, this is just a list if you Maybe there'll be some on here that you haven't heard of that you might want to try out. So many lists. And remember, if you might ever trace the whites, never pass by view 0.1 miles, never pass it by. Go check it out. So small hikes. These are all wonderful. So Artist Bluff, right? Super popular right in Franconia Notch, right by Cannon. It's a really quick hike. It doesn't look like much from the highway, but when you get up there, you're like, you know, you're in the mountains. It feels pretty good. Table Rock in Dixville Notch, way up north, is a spectacular location where there's just this, you know, this jutting rock, you know, cliff. So it drops off on both sides and you kind of just wander out there. That's really a really cool hike. Pine Mountain, this is a picture from Pine Mountain in Gorham. So you can look over at the presidentials. There's some kind of religious retreat up there, and there's an outdoor, like an outdoor chapel-y kind of place. So when they're not using it for those purposes, you can wander around up there. It's really pretty cool. Mount Willard is a classic from Crawford Notch from Highland Center. Just sort of straight up to a viewpoint looking down over Crawford Notch. Mount Kearsarge, a little further southwest, is a great little mountain. They make a nice 3-mile loop, not too much elevation gain. So I like these. We bring our friends and relatives on some of these, you know, the ones that are not really hikers, like they're not really hikers, and it still work. I mean, 1,000 feet still work for sure. Middle and North Sugarloaf. So on Zeeland Road, in Twin Mountain, is like, if I could only have one hike for the rest of my life, somebody made me pick, right? It would be Middle and North Sugarloaf. It's just, it has a little bit of everything, right? It's got the glacial erratics, you know, the big giant glaciers you can walk through. It's got a ladder. It's got fog bridges. It has 2 peaks. It has, you know, really sweeping views. If you've never been up there, I mean, it's a small hike. So if you're driving a long way, right, it may not seem appealing, but it's a wonderful mountain. Mount Major near Winnipesaukee, overlooking Winnipesaukee is great. Mount Pemigewasset right in Franconia Notch is another classic. Iron Mountain is a little harder to get to, but and I think they may have taken it off. It used to be on the 52 with a view list. They may have taken it off. If you go over the summit and keep going to the viewpoint, there's some pretty spectacular views. But you know, hard to go too far wrong. Even Rattlesnake Mountain near Squam Lake, right? You get up there and you feel like you've really gotten somewhere. Oops, I just clicked on Iron Mountain. That's not where I want to go. Oh, and where I need to go is right under my menu. Hang on, let me just close that. There it is. Okay. Favorite 52 with a view. Honestly, that's impossible too. There's a lot of, it's a great list of mountains. Welch Dickey is a classic. It's down like sort of near the Swan Lake area. It's very, very ledgy. There's a lot of views per mile. It's a wonderful loop. Now the Horn is kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's up in the Cabot-Wambeck range up north. But it's just, you come out to this rock outcropping to these 360-degree views, and you're in a place where you maybe never have been before. Just kind of cool. You typically wouldn't go there alone. You do it like when you're picking up Mount Cabot. Mount Cardigan and Fire Screw. Love. I mean, again, I have a mile of trail there, so I'm there all the time, but it's a beautiful loop. When you go up Fire Screw Mountain, you get these beautiful views of Cardigan. From Cardigan, you get look back at Fire Screw. It's a really wonderful hike. Chicora is a classic. There's tons of ways to get up there. That's getting to be a big hike too. That's a full day. I don't have, what does I do? Yes, I do. The Baldface Loop, right? That's heading beyond. So there's, you know, Crawford Notch, Pinkham Notch, Evans Notch. It's almost Maine by the time you get there. The Baldface Loop is a really underrated loop hike in the Whites. It's a top 5 hike for sure. Highly recommend it. The Moats Traverse, so that's right by Conway, North Conway. You can traverse across the moats. You can get a taxi to drop you off on one side. That's a great hike. Percy Peak, these guys are also up north, like north of Lancaster. There's this big bald peak that you get up there and you're like, I'm never going to get down that again. But super, super cool views from up there. Morgan Percival, again, down by the Swan Lake area. Really great for kids. There's like ladder and caves and all kinds of fun things to explore in that one. Easiest 4,000 footers. I mean, you know, it's a 4,000 footer, you're climbing. But some are more straightforward than others. So Mount Jackson via the Webster Jackson Trail on a Crawford Notch. Mount Tecumseh is, I think, still on the list, even though I think they're not sure that it's actually a 4,000 footer anymore. I think it was like 4,003 and they remeasured and they're like, well, maybe it's not, but I think it's still on the list. Wambeck's not too bad. Be the Star King Trail. Again, that's up in my neck of the woods, up in Jefferson. Mount Osceola versus the Mount Osceola via the Mount Osceola Trail. There is also an East Osceola. There's like a 0.9 stretch that links those. So if you could do them in one hike. Mount Garfield it's a long, 5 miles up, but it's pretty moderate the whole way. So that's not too bad to get up there to get these beautiful views inside the Pemmy Loop. Pierce and Eisenhower for presidentials are pretty, one of the more straightforward hikes in terms of just not tripping over rocks. You're still climbing 3,000 feet in these, so you're sweating. But they're probably among the more reasonable. Again, everyone's got their favorites. Like the Lincoln Lafayette Loop is one of the most hiked. It's one of the most, what am I trying to say, hiked hikes in the country. So if you haven't done it, you should, but you should not go when everyone else is there. So again, if it's a beautiful weekend, get there before, start hiking in the dark with a headlamp, or you will be in a sea of humanity. But there's a reason it's beautiful. The Bonds are another spectacular place in the, looking down into the Pemmy Wilderness. Just, incredible country. A lot of people come in through Lincoln Woods or hike that 3 flattened aisles before you start climbing up into the mountains. But it's really fun to come across, like from Zealand, and do it as a traverse. Mount Moosilauke, near Lincoln, is a beautiful, clear, treeless summit. This was a hike I remember my son was probably 10. And he was complaining and moaning the whole way. We clear tree line, and he's just, his head just exploded and he went sprinting up to the top of the mountain. That's a great little mountain. A Pemmy Loop. So I should have a picture of this. So basically you come in, you come in through Lincoln Woods and you're making a giant loop through all the 4,000 footers that ring the Pemmy Wilderness, right? So it's Lincoln Lafayette, Garfield, the Twins, the Bonds. It's a big hike, but it's beautiful. It's spectacular. I did it over one night. I stayed at the Garfield Hut, which was a lot. Like 2 nights would be more fun because you could just relax and enjoy a little bit more. The huts are fun, even if you're not staying at them. You can often.
Mine is just saying he's very impressed that you've gotten one night. Very impressed.
It was a long 2 days. That was a long 2 days.
That's inspiring.
Yeah, and the AMC huts are up there. Like, even if you're not staying at one, you can stop in, you can get clean water, you can get whatever treats that they've made, brownies or bars or supplies, whatever you need. So they're always fun to stop in. Okay. Mount Moriah. I got proposed to you on Mount Moriah. So that will always be a classic. There are some really scary places too. Like there's this slide on oh, that's really loud. So there's lots of these slides. Like, who decided a trail goes there? Let me just point the trail straight up this mountain, right? The White Mountains is famous for not having a switchback. So there's some crazy places. Caps Ridge to Mount Jefferson, so that's like the shortest way up. Mount Jefferson has some like rock climbing places where you feel like you should be in a documentary or something. Glen Boulder Trail up by Mount Washington. It's just these really sweeping views of the presidentials. People swear by a Prezi Traverse. I've not managed to do it in one swoop yet, but where you start from one end or the other, and it's Madison, Adams, Jefferson, Washington, Webster, Monroe, Pierce and Eisenhower. Some people add on Webster, Jackson, and you just traverse this whole stretch of mountains. People do it in a day. Good, more power to them. That's crazy. We tried it as an overnight once, my husband and I, and then we got about halfway and realized that, we'd spotted cars. We got about halfway and we realized I'd left my keys in his car. So that didn't work out too well. But it's just spectacular. There's nothing, it is another world up there. Like, you can look at it from the road, but it's the Lord of the Rings up there. Whoa. Okay. So, it's not all, sweet smelling roses up there. You're working really hard, and not everything's going to go well. You're not always going to have great days. Mount Hale on the 4,000 footer list, and that's the summit. Like, that's it. There's a pile of rocks. I did all this for a pile of rocks. You can do it as a loop of, via Zealand, which is maybe a little nicer, but that one you're checking a box, right? You made it up to Mount Hale. We had one experience, Rocky Branch near Mount Isolation, where it was just endless coming back in this trail, and it was wet, and it was rock to rock to rock, and there's bugs, and it was, we're like, why are we doing this? We used to joke, if you didn't say once a hike, why are we doing this again? Right? You probably weren't trying hard enough. But and then there was this wet and lost day where I bought my InReach afterwards. That it was not a good day. It was definitely not a good day. I do have my phone with me, and I very rarely listen to anything while I'm hiking. But if I'm having that afternoon where I'm just not feeling it, I'll listen to a podcast or a book on tape or some music, and I usually feel better after a little bit. And I'm like, okay, I'm back in the game. Yeah, there's hard stuff out there. So people always joke about Lincoln Woods right off the Kank, that it's this 3 mile, this endless 3 mile road. Well, it's not a road walk. It's gravel, but it's just this endless, to and from. I think Cannon Mountain is miserable from any approach. You can have it. I will never hike up there again. I'll take the gondola up. Galehead Mountain, I sprained my ankle really badly. That was not a great day. It was wet, and there was just this wet, slippery bog thing that I just wiped out, trapped my ankle. We were staying at the hut that night, so I went back and they gave me some frozen peas to put on it. I'm like, all right, I'm hiking out, nothing else you're gonna do. The first mile up the Wildcat Ridge Trail, so coming off at a Pinkham Notch up the Wildcat Ridge Trail, that first mile is really hard. And it's the AT too, so the Appalachian Trail hikers are lugging all their stuff up there. This is Mount Willie, the backside of Mount Willie. I think a lot of people who are peak bagging the 4,000 footers come Tomfield Willie. This is coming the other way, and just standing there okay, here we go. And then looking at it from the top was a little scary. And then all these head walls, this is pretty recent for me. So if you if you look, I mean, Tuckerman Ravine is probably a classic head wall, right? Where you hike up to it and then it's just like right up the where the steepest bit is. But there's lots of head walls on Madison and Adams, like King Ravine, Castle Ravine, like all the Great Gulf, like in the presidential sweep, where like you hike up the valley and then you're like 2,000 feet, up this head wall. And they are spectacular, but really, really painful and hard at the same time. Yeah, so hidden gems. When I was putting this together, I asked a few of the Facebook groups I'm on, hey, so what are your hidden gems? Well, who's going to tell you they're hidden gems, right? They're hidden. So people are joking like, yeah, it's Mount something trail, and maybe the something falls. Like, yeah, I'm not telling you my hidden gems, but I do have a few, and I've not been to all these places, so we shall see. Weeks State Park up in Lancaster, I think is a hidden gem. It's like a little cute little state park. There's trails. You can go up to the top. There's a fire tower and an old residence. It's pretty cool. The Coas Trail here runs. It's the entire length of Coas County, which is a very large landmass in New Hampshire. So it starts at Davis Path down in Crawford Notch and travels all the way up to the Canadian border. And it's pretty neat. There's places in there that you just wouldn't walk otherwise, like the Nash Stream Forest and like the Connecticut Lakes, and that's a pretty neat hike. They just opened some new trail that takes a little bit of road walk out, which is always nice. But that's an adventure where you may be alone for a good chunk of it, and that's quite nice. The Kilkennys, that's Mount Wambeck and Cabot and the Horn and the Bulge. As a traverse is pretty cool. It's a couple of days. And again, you're kind of getting out in the middle of nowhere. Randolph Community Forest. So across, I should probably know what that road is. Is it Route 2 that goes past the Appalachian Trailhead? On the other side, there's a whole community. Randolph has this whole community trail system back there. There's really neat trails, including this thing called the Ice Gulch, which is this deep canyon you hike into, and it's famous for having ice even through summer. Red Ridge Trail to the Moats. The Moats, again, I mentioned before, a really, really pretty set of mountains near Conway. The Rainbow Trail near Carter Dome. I'm pretty sure I've been on it, but I don't remember. But it's the backside of Carter Dome, so it's like an easier way to get up. The Hogsback near Benton, I have not been there. Algonquin Trail up Sandwich Dome. Sandwich Dome is pretty cool. It's on the 52 with a view list, and you can get up via this Algonquin Trail, which is a little bit different than other places. The Pondicherry Reserve is not a mountain to climb. It's a pretty flat wildlife reserve, famous for bird watching. So that's up again, up in Coas County. I'm a big fan of the mountain lakes and ponds. So if you're ever gonna go camping, I always, pick one of the many beautiful ponds out there. Nancy Pond Trail that leaves out of Crawford Notch, tops out at this Norcross Pond, which is really pretty. This is Sawyer Pond. It's not very hidden. There's a campsite here, so it's not a hidden gem, but it's a really pretty spot. Anything in the Great Gulf. So this was my new thing this summer. I'd never hiked in the Great Gulf before. And the Great Gulf is anything, if you imagine the auto road, the Washington Auto Road, what goes off to your right. So between the auto road and like Madison Adams, that is the Great Gulf in there. And it's really cool. The AT passes through there, but there's all these really cool trails that go up to the head walls and climb out. Six Husbands is famous. The Great Gulf Trail. It's a really neat, just super dramatic spot. The Watcher in Franconia, not sure we lost the old man, but this is the Watcher. I have not hiked up there. There's it's a kind of a bushwhack. It's probably pretty well established bushwhack at this point. But you can, this is the north end of Franconia Notch. And so this is the watcher configuration. Grafton Notch State Park. So that's, you're getting into almost into Maine. There's the Wright Trail, has some really cool, like multiple viewpoints up there. If you like old growth pines, the Livermore Trail down by the Tri-Pyramids has this, has a little spur where you can take in some old growth pine trees. And yeah, it's an interesting evolution, from peak bagging, right? From box checking to, why are you out there? Why do I keep going out there all the time? And it's, yeah, I'm still checking off trails. Like I'm still moving ahead of my percentages, right, to get to walk everywhere. But I tell you, it's like therapy for me to be out there. I crave getting out there when I'm not. So, my husband's not a box checker, so he kind of mocks my my checking the boxes. But it's it hits on so many levels, from just from exercise to meditation to being reliant on myself, because I'm out there by myself a lot, and facing fears and what makes me nervous, and stuff. I haven't done a whole lot of through hiking or like really longer hikes. I've done maybe 2 weeks at a stretch. But you really rethink your stuff when you are carrying 25 pounds, and that's all you need for a week. You come home and you're like, wow, I can choose from many t-shirts. Like I don't have to wear the same one all the time. But it's been a really amazing evolution, I think, and just really so good for my mental health, and especially through COVID, being out there was just kept me sane. So even on the days when, it's funny, I used to, when I started and we were bagging the 4,000 footers, we'd get to the peak and then we'd start hiking out, and you would inevitably get to a spot where you're like, oh God, there's a couple miles left. I just want to be done. I just want to get to the car. I just want to get to Woodstock Station. And you just want it to be over. And it's funny, like now it still happens to me, but now it's more like I'm still walking in the woods. Like, this is great. I'm out here, I get to do this thing. Like my body works. So it's been pretty remarkable. Yeah, and hike your own hike. Everybody wants to, tell you how you should do it, where you should go, just like I'm doing here. But it's what works for you. If you don't want to check the boxes, don't check the boxes. If you just want to, like my husband, go out with a camera and spend 2 hours in a 20 foot radius, that's great. We just did a little hike, well, sort of a hike, where we took the Wildcat gondola, the Wildcat ski lift up to the peak. They just closed over Labor Day, but you can take the ski lift up and then you can hike from up there. And of course I had to go a couple miles that way to get a little 0.7 mile section of trail that I hadn't walked on. But he just rode the gondola, the ski lift up with his camera, and he just spent a couple hours taking pictures. So, there it is. It's all good. Yeah, I mean, class, a little cliche, but it's right. Like the mountains do call. When I drive to work in the morning, I drive past the mountains and I'm like, yeah, wish I was going that way and not to work. But yeah, so that's what I have. Does anybody have any questions or anything you want to talk about? Or you can feel free to unmute yourself too at this point.
I love your idea of having going, I love the hikes, but then going afterwards to get something good to eat. I kind of planned that out too. I'm like, okay, we're going to be going right by. Got to stop. It's kind of a, incentive for me.
Yeah, absolutely. That burger tastes really good after you.
Yes. Oh, definitely. And I like the idea of the coloring in the map, what your trails,
I'm obsessed with that map, honestly.
what you've done. Yeah.
That is my jam.
Super. And so did you say that you put the links to in the chat?
Yeah, so back up at the top of the chat, there's a link. So if someone actually could click on it and make sure that I've shared it appropriately. I often forget to just change the sharing settings.
I'm not.
Oh, you know what? I sent it. I sent it to the waiting room participants. Hang on.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And no one was in the waiting room.
Oh, oh, cool. Because you give us so much great information. That's wonderful.
There it is. There it is. That should have all the links.
Oh, wonderful. Yes. Perfect.
See, Zoom, I'm out of practice.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Very cool. Love it. Yes, because you obviously put a lot of time in, and I just love the idea of some of the gear. I like the hat, the deer fly patches.
It's kind of disgusting, but it's really entertaining. Because those things fly around your head and they're maddening, right? And they swoop in and they get you and you can't swat them.
Right. And you got your poles, and I'm worried I'm gonna hit somebody with my poles, and so that's very good tips. I like very nice. Oh. And we have the 52 of the View book at the library, but I think we're gonna have to look into some of the other the white. I'm sure we have the White Mountain Guide one too, but maybe make sure we have the new one when it comes out.
Yeah, so it should be fairly soon, and the folks like me who are tracing, right, we're all anxious to see what changed. Like, did you add trails? Did you subtract trails? Is that going to change what I have left to do? So,
and the purpose of tracing is just to check and make sure that are you doing it for yourself, or are you doing it to check and see how the trails are?
I'm mostly for yourself, like okay. You would set any hiking goal.
Okay.
But I do try and give feedback, because all the trails are adopted by somebody. So if I come across something, if I can figure out who I can send that information to, that's also good too, to pass that back along. Sure.
Oh, you give us a lot to think about. This has been really fun. It really has.
I hope it doesn't come across as like, it too much, right? Because at the end of the day, you just got to put your shoes on and grab some water and just go start, right? Like,
and I do have a bug net, and I do look dorky, and I don't care.
I love my bug net. Like in the spring, I'm gardening once the black flies are out.
Yes.
Bug net's on.
Definitely. Absolutely. Oh, very cool. All right. Anybody else have?
And Concord too, I should say. I lived in Concord for a long time. It has a really well-developed trail system. It does. We love the trails, and you can get to everything online. There's a little book you can buy too, but you can get everything online, descriptions. We are very fortunate. Oh yeah, even like, I used to live near like Swope and Wynot Parks. Yes. The West End Trail. There's just so many cool places in Concord. Yeah. We're doing a book walk and talk with the book Rooted. And I think it's on the 27th, so next week. What's the book? It's called Rooted by Linda Lynn Haupt. It's the intersection of life at the crossroads of science, nature, and spirit. It's a real kind of interesting book. And so they're going to walk and talk and do a little book talk on the Marjorie Swope Trail. Nice. That's pretty fun. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much, Sue. And you're welcome. You're inspiring us to go out and get the lists, and I love doing it in the fall too. Like you say, it is very nice. There's no bugs. I know. Just having the bugs be gone, and the humidity, when the humidity goes away. Yes. Yeah. Spectacular. And then you get the fall colors. Do you have a favorite place for colors for the foliage? Oh gosh, I think I mean, often further south, there's more
Mm,
deciduous trees and fewer conifers, but the view of anything that's above tree line when there's snow on the rocks and
mm.
still color below is just driving through the notches is just beautiful.
Nice.
And it's so remarkable to be in the parking lot. Like maybe it's nice in the parking lot, like it's you don't need your jacket. By the time you get to the top, you're in Narnia, right? The winter's set in up there.
Yes, yeah. That's right. So like you say, got to bring all the layers.
All the layers.
Things. Yeah. Very cool. Well, thank you. Given us lots of food for thought. I'm gonna make sure I got the saving the link from the chat. I see the link. Yep. So that works. Yeah. And super.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing and then I will I'll stop the recording. So we'll be in contact later about that.
Okay, thank you so much, Sue. I really appreciate it. It was wonderful.
Oh, you're welcome.
Really, really appreciate it.
All right, and if any of you, I have not seen any of your faces, right? If you ever run into me hiking, just
Yeah. There you go. Oh, thanks. Whoops. All right. Thanks, Sue.
All right. Everybody have a great evening.
You too. Thank you.
Alrighty.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Good night.